Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Bulletproof Mindset, Scotland's #1 health, fitness and entertainment podcast. Today's episode, we are interviewing our good friend, Geo Mcnee. This is Mr. Mindset, Mr. Motivation, Mr. Discipline, and it was great to have a chat about his life story and kind of how he came through from the early years of going through foster care into becoming the man who he is today. Now, in short, Geo is a all-rounded entrepreneur from anything that you can think of, from buying businesses, selling businesses, making an absolute killing in the property game, not just buying and selling his own properties, but getting into service accommodation and helping others get success from that too. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are going to come away from today's conversation and kind of redefine your purpose and level up your mindset. If you're looking to get some additional help with this, we're going to leave a link below to Geo's social media channels and also where you can get involved with his Mount Mindset community. This seems to be the next kind of chapter in his life on raising the vibration and frequency of how people feel on a day-to-day basis. Now, if you're new around here and you haven't tuned into our episodes before, we release new episodes every Monday and Thursday at 6 a.m. with the occasional guest episode, which we'll release on a Saturday. Now, if you do enjoy today's chat, we only ask one thing from you, and that is, if you're listening on Apple Podcast or Spotify, consider leaving a 5-star rating. This is the best way to support us, and it's completely free to do so. So, without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Havar's one of the most beautiful places I've been.
To go.
It's like a wee tiny island. I don't know, it's just such a nice life. I don't know if it's just sunlight. Sunlight feels good.
It makes you feel
You're just by the seaside and I don't know, it's just beautiful.
I mean, that's the nature of things. Like, see, when you go there and you hear the water sort of swishing up against the beach and you feel the sun.
No, you're being a fucking gimp, mate.
No, you told me.
Listen to this.
I've seen your Instagram.
Listen to this.
I'm talking about connecting to nature. You were connecting to fucking 80s workout videos with Jane Fonda.
Built on it. That's a good tune though.
No.
Aye, it is. You know what? It's person dependent.
James, you need to talk to somebody about that.
You know what, that's a good place to start. When have you always been into health and fitness? Like, when was the first time you remember going into the gym? It's obviously we obviously know you, but the guys listening, there'll be some people out there that don't know you, and none of your business ventures kind of revolve around anything to do with fitness, but I don't want to give you a compliment here, but you're in decent shape, right?
Thanks.
And you go for it. But it's fucking recorded and everything, right? But when's the first time you kind of remember doing something fitness related?
I remember going swimming when we were kids, and I must have been sort of 7 or 8 years old, and it was the first sort of comment. Do you remember when someone commented on your structure? I must have looked stocky because the comment was, "That boy is solid." You know, just my youngest son's like that. Ted, he's just like a sinewy, solid, muscular. You know, that was the way he was made, and that must have been what I looked like at this poolside. So, I don't like, you know, swimming. I think the biggest thing I'd maybe lifted was an armband or a float.
Yeah,
but I was pretty good. And you know, if you swim, you're powerful. You can swim fast. And I remember later on, you start to play things like football at school, and you would play. I wasn't tall by any matter of means. You were playing against much bigger guys, and that's when it showed up. That
pushing
power,
off the ball,
you know, and you were explosive. You were fast, and you could use your strength to counter their leg length and height and that type of thing. And then when we went up to high school, they had a gym, and that was sort of the eureka moment where you know where you're sort of figuring out who you are as a teen, and then found the weight room, and it was like, oh.
See, they took it me growing up, I think it's the same for you.
We didn't have a weight room either.
There was a gym, but
nothing.
you never had access to it. Like, it was all stored away where the gymnastic mats were and stuff. Sometimes it get brought out, but being a wee guy, you were always fanning about anyway.
We remember, like, before we got to high school, myself and my pal, he got a set of weights, and that was us. You know, absolutely, just the first sort of feeling of starting lifting weights, and you were hooked. Had absolutely no clue what we were doing. Probably just, you know, nuked our biceps over the summer, but just felt, you know, that buzz, that power.
See,
you know, when you feel good.
The testosterone was like,
because the old testes have probably never dropped. This is like primary 6, primary 7, because we hadn't been to high school yet. And I remember feeling, I was like, what's this? And because you feel that rush and you feel that
the
pump,
competitiveness kicking in,
and you feel like you can feel it, something that's tangible. You go, oh, what's this? And my pal was quite strong as well. He was more a sort of lean, powerful. I was more like big and stocky, powerful. So you could see the veins and everything in his arms, and I just could feel like somebody blew me full of air, like, just pumping up.
So we were talking on the phone the other day because your kids are kind of going through this just now. Your son went down to, was it Coatbridge council gym, and then 2.5 hours. Like, I remember those days so well. And mine's was Aquatech. Was yours YMCA?
No.
YMCA gym.
What was that as a teen?
Just as a kid, like, there's just, you remember that so vividly, and now you're like, man, I wish I had that same drive sometimes, like that wee guy drive inside you. So it'd be interesting to see him evolve into whatever it is.
Well, he said in the gym, because he went with his pal, and his pal, is very much a novice. Quite a short wee guy, but really motivated, really enthusiastic. You can see the buzz in him. You can see the energy. I'm like, you've got good energy. George has been in the gym downstairs. We've got a wee gym in the house, so he's familiar with weights and lifting weights. You can see it. He's getting up and he's working out. He's training. He's lean. He's muscular, and he can see it. And he went to the gym, got his induction, he took his t-shirt off, his vest underneath, and they're like, "Oh, you're not going to just be doing
cap shoulders,
all right?
You can lift his
cap shoulders." Looks at his dad like, "Aye." I always remember that, like getting inductions when I'd been lifting for a couple of years, and it was a compliment when the person who's meant to give your induction looks at you and goes, "Just go," and you're like, "I fucking made it. I've made it."
You knew.
Aye.
But you always got some jobs worth it. Be like, yes, we need to give you an induction for health and safety.
I know, and you're like, come on, mate.
You're like, you dirty, but you slagging me.
Showing you how to fucking turn the treadmills on and all that.
Did health and safety come in and show you how to bench? I want to see some numbers for you.
So, see, for people who don't know you, say somebody meets you in a bar and they say, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" What do you tell them?
A painter and decorator.
Is that what you say?
Yes, I'm a painter and decorator. It's just easier.
I guess it is. There's an art because you get your finger in every pie.
Nobody believes me though. That's the thing. Nah, they can tell. They're like,
it's not the same.
I never believed you the first time I met you. Maybe the first hour and a bit, because when I first met you, spoke for about 2.5 hours in the gym.
I was made to be a podcaster.
I know. I was like, right, who
started the journey?
Honestly, the first time I met you, I was like, I can't even mind the first couple of things you said. But you're like, I do this, and I'm like, this guy's pure talking shite. Do you know? There's hundreds of like guys in the gym who come at you and they start talking and they tell you this big extravagant story, and you're like, mate,
you're just a guy.
You're just like, I benched 405 in high school and that. You're like, right, sound mate. But we kept talking, and I was like, right, maybe this guy is like one of the guys in the gym who tells the truth. And I was like, fuck knows, we'll find out. But after 2 hours, I always remember, I was like, that was mad. That first conversation was like, I always remember that. I was like, I went away from it. I was like, I was inspired. Genuinely was. Like, not to big you up, I was like, that was a right good conversation. That was weird as fuck.
Well, it's just
how
like,
did that happen?
It's like what we're talking about, because that example is why we do this. Like, we do this because see the kind of interactions, they're the ones that you go, I wish everybody could hear that. And it's that natural instinct where, you've done a lot of podcasts and we're having a conversation, you're asking me things, just the way that art, that it's not a science, it's an art where you pick that up and then we have a great conversation. That's why we want to do it, because how many people out there would love to have been a fly on the wall and have those wee sort of things and have something genuine and real, because you're right, there's a world out there of just bravado and bluster that is really just a bit of fresh air. And people are naturally cynical, and rightfully so, because they're going, look, I don't know if this sort of adds up. And probably to your question about what I tell people, it's you tend to, when you've done as many things as I have, you tend to play it down because that initial instinct is you don't want to go like you don't want to go into a situation where, hey, look, this is all about me and I'm not great. You want to have a bit of a rapport first.
Did you find that, like, obviously when because I imagine you've learned that from maybe previous interactions coming up through your 20s into your 30s and whatnot, did you find that when you used to, like, have you always been someone that has shouted about their success and then you've seen somebody's demeanour change and how they treat you and all that sort of stuff, or have you always been pretty humble?
No, I mean, it's one of those things that you see. I mean, I used to see a lot of it. I always remember this interaction in a train coming home. It was maybe 17 at the time. I was working in Edinburgh. I was working for a mobile phone shop, and I caught the very top of the wave, like the wave of that being the place to work, because it was big
bank.
commissions, you were making money.
Aye.
And I actually told a lie to get that first job. I lied about my age. You know, some people might morally think that's wrong. I thought it was more thinking outside the box. You know, I knew I wanted to achieve, and I figured out a way to achieve
get
it.
in it. Aye.
So I remember being 17, and the thing that set me off then was that I didn't want to be too loud. Because I had something to hide. Right, I shouldn't have been doing this because I was a year younger. So there was that situation of, hey, look, I'd want to be the grey man. Like, if we think we call that now the grey man, and then there's the other side of it, as in that I'd never made any, like, I was broke the first part of my life. So this was right. You've got an opportunity to make a lot of money. Like, you've got a secret to keep in the bag. And it is money you've never seen before. It's literally like a life-changing moment.
Yeah.
So it was that, you don't want to be too loud. But I remember coming home on the train, and there was a guy who was a few years older than me, and he was making it big in the corporate world in Edinburgh. And he, looked the part, dressed the part, but he had this sort of condescending tone of making noise about himself. He was pumping up his own tires. And I remember saying to him, he was, we were, at 17, we were making we're going back 20 years, we're making easily 40 grand a year. Now, as a 17-year-old that's there by the skin of his teeth, that has magically landed the role, whose biggest month that he's ever made is 332 quid. That is like, I might as well be on 10 million quid a month, because it was that alien to me. And this guy's sitting across the seat in the train, and he's making a big bravado about himself. He's talking big about what he's doing, a working standard life, and I'm on an amazing salary, and it's, we're climbing the corporate ladder, and it's way better than you shit ballsack salesman, and yous are just sort of like the fucking riffraff, and I'm on 18 grand a year. And it was like that. I just thought,
flat.
I'm thinking the way he's talking, I think this guy's going to be, he's going to be in fucking six figures a year. Like, fair enough. I'm the dauber kind of sales guy, that's just chasing that wave. And you clearly have done well, and you sound great. And then it was that anticlimax. I thought, I never want to be that guy.
I
never ever want to be that guy. Because he didn't know it yet. But I was sitting with two guys that are a wee bit older than me and myself, and I was like, whoa,
not a good look.
The thing that I was lucky to be around was I was always around guys that were 10, 15, 20 years older than me. So I was literally looking into the future of what it was like.
If you stay on that path.
Yeah, and I was picking up their wisdom, their experience, their knowledge. It was like a sponge. Like, what do I do? Because I didn't really know what to do. I'm fresh out the wrapper in terms of work experience.
And career.
And I thought, well, I'm better just soaking up the knowledge here to try and find my feet, rather than necessarily being driven to go out and be like, I'm the biggest fucking ticket in town, like the guy on the train. And I always, when you get things that you just remember in your life, you go,
they just stand out.
That was one of them, and I'm sure there's been 10,000 of them interactions after that was the first one. But I thought,
I never want to be that guy. I want to be the opposite.
Yeah, and it's like the thing where I'm sure as the years went by, and I'd known the guy for a good 5 years after it, and they say success leaves clues. Well, there was a trail of clues that were happening in my life, and there wasn't the same level of clues that were happening in his life. Yet when you look at how, and we've discussed this before about how important what you attach your identity to, and I thought this guy's identity is what he's described here, and how must it feel when there's a mismatch between this identity he thinks he's got and his reality, in which he actually has, and we see that in social media a lot now.
It's more enhanced in today's day. I know you're a big fan of LinkedIn, so we'll not go into that just yet. Before, I want to kind of take it back to the start. So when you said you kind of came from no money and all that sort of stuff, but see, before we do that, what would you say to someone? Like, what is it you do, Gio? What are you saying to you? Do you identify as the kind of, I guess it's a wee bit of a wanky term now, the entrepreneur, or do you say like I'm a property guy, or do you say like I do a wee bit of this and that? Like how do you tell people?
normally bracket as an investor because it's a sort of broad stroke.
Not an influencer then, no.
No yet.
No yet.
Getting there.
Yeah, I could be one.
Ah,
I
fuck
think you could get
aye.
one,
Got it in me.
Ah,
I
you
think
know, you've
so.
got it in you.
As long as I
Don't
get,
try and be one, but you've got it in you.
right, okay, I'll see if I can work.
It's
on
like being that guy in the train. Don't try and be him, but you've got it in you.
that. He was doing well. Like he had me
Aye,
sold up until then. Like
You
I
just
was-
had to shut up about the last bit.
like if he just didn't tell me what was actually going into his bank, I'd have been like, this guy's made it.
Aye.
You know, he's absolutely caked.
So how much did he say he was making? Like going up
18.
Yeah, I was making 40 grand a year at 17, and he was making 18.
and that's the way he was going on.
And like I was trying to visually hide my surprise at this
Right.
because the story was,
So intense.
he was building up this whole picture, and I'm thinking, right, I'm just a young, brand new kind of salesman that's learning from all these great sort of experienced sales guys. Because what happened is they'd all went into the really, really good sales guys go where the hot money is. So all these guys had jumped onto this sort of industry, and they were the who's who could sell. So naturally they would train the new guys. And me being the young whippersnapper, the young upstart, I'm literally in a perfect storm of where can you extract the most experience and wisdom from? And I'm surrounded watching these guys, being trained by these guys, hearing the do's, the don'ts, what to do. And you could see the difference where you would see there's guys in their 40s, and you've got a guy in his 40s that's borrowing money to the end of the month despite how much he's making because he's completely chaos with money.
Yeah.
And I think when you get to 40, you've made it. Like
Aye.
you're dialed in.
We thought
And
that we
then
were
you've
20s.
you have an expectation.
No, I'm here. No, what?
And I'm thinking to myself, this guy's going to be, surely everybody, they're making a lot of money, they're doing well, they're going to have it all figured out. And what I seen was there was guys that had never sorted themselves out despite how much they could make. And then there was other guys who were ultra dialed in. And this is what they were doing. What are you doing? They'd be looking at plans for properties, new builds and stuff. Like, you can buy property. And this is, so you're seeing that they're in the same arena, but they're having massively different results.
Right.
So when I explain to people what I tell them, I say I'm an investor because I've been involved in everything from building a property portfolio to equity, stocks, commodities, businesses, looked at mergers and acquisitions, even gave advice on a purchase of an oil field. So having that sort of experience is difficult to encapsulate.
Just one bit.
I can do all this sort of analysis and work out if something's a good idea or not to invest time, money, or take part in.
Makes sense. It's a good answer. So I guess like 9-year-old Geo Mcnee, what was his dream when he was older? What did he want to be?
I think I wanted to be a fireman.
Aye?
I think I wanted to be a fireman. I remember seeing a fireman and I thought that's a cool job. And I thought, isn't it good to go and rescue people and sort of go and be brave and sort of be gung ho into
Go for
something. I thought that was what I wanted to do.
So where does it go? You went into foster care at what age?
I can't remember if it was 10 or 11.
Right, so
I think it was 11.
what happened that first stage of your life then? What was life like for you? Can you remember much about it?
Life is well, it's like life is what I knew, so I didn't know anything. I only knew what I knew, so I didn't know any better or worse. But it was fairly looking back in terms of what a normal childhood would be. It was fairly volatile. So mum and dad didn't get on while I suffered from pretty severe kind of mental issues, or struggled with our mental health, and in a severe form, not the sort of Diet Coke versions that you get today. Can
I say that? You'll get jailed to that.
Well, they can let me know.
Come ahead.
So they can bring it on.
And even, I guess, obviously, this day and age, we're more aware social media is a thing. Diagnosis seem to be the key for anything. Back then, I would imagine that was like few and far between. So did you kind of know what was happening at that point?
Because it was showing up in terms of, we had pretty volatile. We'd moved, I think I was in 5 different primary schools in 7 years. We were in women's aid refuge, having to get put up in hotels because the situation wasn't, our parents were fighting, so they were going their own sort of ways. Being predominantly in a single parent household with constantly moving, and a mother that's sort of dependent on what her moods are like. She's either on top of the world or completely down.
Yeah.
So it was, as I said, we didn't really know any.
Yeah, just that was life for you.
That was sort of it. But I remember the sense of embarrassment. Like I felt embarrassed about the whole thing.
Oh, really?
I had that sense that I knew something was up, and it's not to, it's certainly not to beat up on my parents, because all those things in that part of my life contributed to the characteristics that I've got now. In terms of resilience and not suffering fools lightly.
You could have been the guy in the train telling the story.
I mean, like if you look back at, like if I look back at the people that I was around that were in similar environments, I mean, one of the things that I seen in foster care was I seen people that were in a way worse situation than I was. And there was myself, my brother and sister. And I think if I understand how the system works is that there's a crossover when you're 10 and below, there's a group of foster carers that look after you, and you're 10 and above, it's another group. So because I was on the wrong side of that, myself, my brother and sister had to split up. Now, whether that was because of the age or whether it would probably be difficult to place 3 kids in the one foster home, but essentially my brother and sister went to one foster carer and I went to the other. I don't know if I'd maybe just have an optimistic or maybe don't have negative feelings about that, but it certainly shows up in my brother and sister more than it showed up in me.
That's what I was going to ask you. So how would you say you're the oldest? So you close to them when you're 9, 10? I'm trying to even think what my relationship was like with my younger brother, but I can't imagine, like, was it just one of the things you're like, okay, I'm going here, you guys are going there, see you soon? Or?
Well, I mean, like going for the environment where, we would week to week, you would get to like tail end of the week, the weekend, and it'd be a choice between like dry cornflakes or electricity. So on the Sunday, the electricity might run out, and then you're waiting for Monday morning to go and collect money for the post office, so you can buy electricity and things are back, good to go. But and that was the situation. So maybe my mum wasn't ideal at sort of planning or organising, which is people can be guilty of, but it was more extreme when you have little money, and then it's even more extreme when you're suffering from sort of mental health issues. And that was the thing that we seen. And maybe it was because growing up in, I always remember being, I can't remember, it was 4 or 5, but it must have been 5 because my brother was still a baby, and we were carrying black bags, must have been the stuff that we had, and we were getting on the bus to go to this women's aid refuge over in Clackmannan. I always remember it was a beautiful stone house. I remember thinking, wow, this is an amazing house. It was massive. It had this stone front. It looked like a Georgian kind of mansion. Yeah. And that was as a 5-year-old. Now I know that's sort of the construction of houses. Yeah. But to me, I've never seen anything like this. I was born in a new town, so I'd never seen a building quite as opulent and as striking as that. Yeah. It was incredible. And I remember going there, and the bus driver looked like Dolly Parton, which must have been a big Dolly Parton fan. Now, the few things is that when the area that you grew up, the buses looked a certain colour. This one was a different colour. And then the bus driver wasn't a guy, it was a woman with massive blonde hair. So they things stood in my memory. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, this is what it's like. So that was from 5 all the way through to 11. It's highly volatile. So going in these different places, being in women's aid refuge, 2 or 3 times, being in emergency accommodation, being in temporary accommodation, and then, the moves in between. So I don't know if I was maybe just hardened that, it wasn't that I went from the picturesque life to, hey, something's happened. It was sort of like it was life. It was like life evolving through. Yeah. And kids are great because they adapt.
Well, they build we always talk about like the lack of resilience sometimes in someone's upbringing and how that can kind of shape their strengthened or weakened mindset in terms of how they view things. So it sounds like that's where maybe why the age of 10, when you were getting separated, why the kind of default pattern was, okay, cool, I'm just getting on with it.
Well, look back to, like, for instance, my brother would have been 5, he would have been 5 or 6 around that time, and my sister would have been 8 or 9. Again, I can't remember exactly what point in the year when my birthdays were, but it was around that time. And I guess maybe that extra exposure and probably being aware of it, because I was older and I could see it. I thought, this is less, it was less of a change. Like the delta or the rate of change in life, that delta didn't seem extreme to me. Whereas that delta, if someone had the typical life, that delta would have been massive. So it was that where I thought this isn't that much a change. And coming from, choosing dry cornflakes, or we'll need to wait till tomorrow, or we need to get sort of electricity tomorrow, that type of thing, to go to that, to end up in foster care where they're like, right, we're going to give you £5.50 a week, and you're going to get every week, and we'll do all this, and like, so the electricity stay on all the time. They're like, yeah. I'm like, right, I'm in.
Foster care, like,
so
it's a dream holiday.
I get a taxi to school, you're going to give me money. Right, I've got an allowance here, and
food on the table.
There's like everything's stable.
Yeah.
Right, cool. Like, however long we need to do this for, this is like, we'll ride this out.
Yeah.
Another thing was, my mum was going into hospital. She was in hospital, so the hope was that she was going to get better out of this.
Of course, yeah.
And it's like, right, so this place seems really quite good, and she's going to get better.
So
and look, we can see each other when we go down to see her
life's
mum.
good. Yeah.
We'll see each other at school, and we can get a taxi. I was like, this is all right. And I think partly that, and mostly the rate of change didn't seem that disruptive. But when I was in foster care, I seen like boys that their parents were into drugs, in prison, in with the wrong crowds. Maybe they were doing drugs. Like really they were way further on. And I thought, like, things doesn't seem that bad.
I was going to say, do you remember the thoughts that you were having then at that young age?
I remember them drinking. I remember them telling me, because what would happen is you would speak to these guys, the particular Peter and Isabel that were my foster carers. Peter worked in I don't know what the term was, like it was they called it a unit there, which was a modern name for a borstal. Right. So like troubled, like really, like you were going to that centre. It was like a detention centre for teenage boys.
Yeah.
So he handled highly volatile boys, and they particularly worked with the 10 to 16 years old kids. So they were a magnet to these kids.
Yeah.
But they would all come in and they'd be in survival mode. They'd be in survival instinct of, they would try and peek out, they'd try and bluster, they'd want to try and get position. And then they would also be they wouldn't want to tell everybody, nobody could be trusted. And I think that's where I grew my ability to speak to people, because they would find that you weren't a threat, and then they could be a wee bit more vulnerable, and they could be a little bit more open, and then they felt that they could talk, and you could see them sort of relaxing, and they would settle in, and they would be like, they needed it. But what they were telling me, I'm like, right, look, I'm only, my life's nowhere near as bad as yours.
So it's kind of these little reality checks of, well, life ain't, not that you would ever have of the perception that life was bad, where you're like, man, these guys have got it a lot, guys and girls got it a lot worse.
It's exactly like that, because I would speak to people and they would be like, surely that's terrible. And I'm like, fuck, it was all right. I was like, it was actually quite good. I was getting pocket money. I was getting a taxi to school. There was all these head cases that were coming in that were like really, really mental. They were wild. Like, they were wild.
You're like, that guy, man.
They were like literally feral children, talking about like running away from the police and getting chasers on, motocross bikes and all that, like really, really hooligan stuff. Like they were right out on the edge. And then I'm like, there's a pool table in the hospital ward. I can play unlimited pool. Like, you have unlimited
small things in life.
Like, there's this huge hospital. I can go and explore all the different places. And I'm like, it wasn't that bad.
I think it's even hearing that and knowing, getting to know you over the last couple of months or 6 months and whatnot. It's like these little breadcrumbs that you say. You could tell, like looking back at that and where you are now. Like, I think you were always destined to do something pretty great, especially with the mindset stuff and that you all do, having that from such a young age. And it's weird how you can choose being the victim of a situation, or you can not use it necessarily, or you can pivot your mindset and see the good, or like, hey, our life ain't that bad. Like, I've got electricity and all that. What was high school like? Was that, did you get into much trouble? Were you a good kid, bad kid? Were you? Book smart and all that?
I got an academic attainment award for science. I was one of the only students that ever scored higher than 100% mark, because there was 7 tests that were scored and there was one bonus question. They obviously thought that somebody would not get a 100% record. Yeah. So I got the 100%. I scored 100% on every test and got the bonus. And I had a really great teacher, Mrs. McMichael. Was just, when you get someone that's just made to do that job. She was an absolutely incredible teacher.
Just one of the first role models you maybe came across in life, or was it a few?
Fucking mental. She was like absolutely, like, she was the mad scientist. She sort of had this wacky appearance. She had this big hair. She was in, I can't remember what martial arts, but she used to have busted up knuckles. She was hard.
What school was this?
It was in Inveramond in Livingston.
Right.
And she was fucking hardcore, but brilliant.
Aye.
I mean, clearly brilliant at what she did, but she just had these really eccentric, wacky. So
It worked.
Yeah.
It worked.
But I remember that exploration of sciences, and it came back to, again, like I think of the childhood where there was great things in my childhood, and I remember getting an encyclopedia for a birthday and reading through it and being completely fascinated.
Obsessed, yeah.
Just like a wonder, like, there is this stuff in the world. Kevlar, you know, you can shoot a bullet at this and a bullet doesn't go through it. I was like, whoa.
It's no wonder you like trading now, like the actual intricacies of the detail and following the line and all that through. That's mad.
It was just a wonder, just amazing sort of like, well, and I was like a sponge. I remember looking at this and just thinking, I cannot believe what's out here. And it was that just sort of approach of taking the time. And, you know, I'd done some work with my youngest boy last night. I think he'd watched the dodgy video and he wasn't, he was like, Dad, I'm scared, you know, and he's thinking about the video, and I says, I'll show you something, and I'm going to show you the power of your imagination, the power of your attention. So I done something. He's like, Dad, it's not going to work, you know, and I said, right, okay, well, if it's not going to work, that's okay, let's try it anyway. He says, what harm can it do? And then in a minute, he's completely forgot about what he's doing, and I'm showing him, I was like, can you see the sense of your power? Can you understand the focus? Can you see how your focus and your attention works? He's like, can you do it again?
I thought you were saying you were going to chuck him in an ice bath or something like that.
I go running around
outside 100 laps first. 10
It's not a bad idea. But I remember saying, like, I remember looking at these things, and that was what I was showing him last night, was the wonder of your imagination, and that you can create things in your mind, and you can have this amazing experience and feeling. And it's a bit like to your question about, was it, you can be the victim and you can blame everything on your circumstances, and that's an option. And I understand that. I understand when people do it, they think that they're broken. They think that you know, if all these circumstances have left scars, and they've got this sort of, you know, feeling of not being worth anything. They've got low self-esteem. I get it. Like, I understand. Like, you know, and it's that appreciation of how they are seeing it. And it's it's that shift in perspective where, you know, it's like a coin. There's two sides to it. You're just looking at that one side, and it's shifting it over to the other one. And it's what I done with Ted last night. I'm shifting his perspective, I'm shifting his focus, and it's probably what I did back then, where I just remember being able to. Escape's a dirty word these days, but I was escaping into this world of wonder and fascination. And despite all that was going on, I found great pleasure in this book, this encyclopedia. Like, wow! And then that's manifested within me when I get to this high school and they're talking about sciences. I'm like,
fucking
yes. It's mad you're talking about this encyclopedia, because we just had Rob on yesterday, and his job in Australia was selling them to families, because this is where you got your information. And you would think we'd be better off in today's age because we've got access at the fingertips to anything that we need to know. Yeah, it's like, I don't care about that shit, and you swipe by it. It's almost too much control and too much power. Mad, isn't it? So high school's all right. Fast forward, like see in foster care, what happens with that as you start to become a young adult and stuff? Do you stay in that foster care, or is there a time limit? Do you know any of this? Or?
I don't know, because I never brushed up against the time limit. It was 3 spells that we were in foster care for a duration of time that lasted sort of 9 months up to 18 months.
I was going to say, I just can't imagine somebody like, I'm 25, I live with my foster parents and that sort of stuff. You know what I mean?
I think the sort of social services are like, you've got to fucking get your shit
still
together.
get my £5 a week and all that sort of stuff.
Sitting there like, where's the pocket money stuff? And the irony is that that's what life looks like for real parents.
I know, sadly.
There's a system there for people that have no parents. Then you've got parents there that are, you know, pampering their 30-year-old kid. He's not ready to go out in that big bad world yet. It's like, keep doing this, he's never going to be ready.
I know.
So one thing I was going to touch on is, like, volatile childhood. Did you ever have any resentment towards your parents at any point that maybe push you on towards starting to work hard, or was it just always in you, just from a positive perspective?
I don't know if resentment's the word that I would have used, because resentment sort of, I never ever felt that they were doing it to me.
Right.
Like, and you would resent it if you'd felt like hard
it
done
was
by.
like, straight to you.
I'd sort of understood really, really quickly that there was no malice in what they were doing. It wasn't like they decided that we were sort of bastard children that they wanted to punish.
Aye.
Like, they just had their own stuff going on and it wasn't working out.
Aye.
I probably pitied their situation more than resented it.
That's big though, because most people these days, like me especially, like I resented people for a long, long time, and luckily I don't anymore. And then I speak to so many people, and they resent their parents or one parent or the other. You're coming on saying that, and I would expect somebody in that situation, like, volatile as fuck, to resent, and you don't, and that's quite special.
Like, you can understand why they feel that way. I mean, you can totally
absolutely
get it. I mean, but it's that thing where, if you mislabel an emotion, it can cause havoc. And it, probably if you're in that survival reactive environment, it's difficult to ask yourself that question: have I labelled this properly, or have I done the work? Have I went through it? But I remember being pretty intuitive and going, like, this is sort of them that's got this going on. Like, I probably, for as much as my mum had her spells have been really, really difficult, I sensed that she did have love for her kids. She just didn't. Like, just things were going AWOL in her mind.
Yeah.
Like, she was just suffering. So it wasn't a case of, hey, look, you're this completely horrendous, heinous human being that I should resent. It was more a case of, right, it appears that you've got some stuff going on. And being the oldest, I was sort of the man of the house, doing things like making sure my brother and sister got out to school. If my mum was in a bender at a weekend, then I was washing the uniforms, making sure that they were getting out to school, waking them up, giving them.
Well, I hope your wife hears this, so you do the washing, aye. You're sitting saying to Gillian like that, no, you should be washing and ironing house shirts. And John's like, I had no chance. And I was like, oh, you're dead.
Don't say that to, you guys say that to Gillian, man.
I actually said to her, I says, why can you not fucking iron a shirt?
Is that what it was?
I said, why is it not, women can't iron a shirt?
Yeah, that's fucking hard, man. That shit is hard.
Ironing in general is just... it's difficult. Pivoting a wee bit, did you get any pity throughout high school and that sort of stuff when you're in for first year? Nah, I didn't.
You didn't want to let anybody know.
I was going to say, did you keep it close to you? Is that them? Was a fear of like embarrassment or anything? Was
100%,
it?
because like we were poor, so it was the usual sort of the usual sort of things going through high school, of like, shit, I don't want to stand out. As you seen the kids that were really scruffy, you'd literally be bullied. There's no that.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's character building, roughing up, that sort of thing, which is like, right, look.
Then there's trauma.
And then there's like the, fuck, you went too far there. And like, they were getting the rough end. I remember a funny story. It was one of the times that there was a bully. It was a couple of years older than me. He was a right nasty fucker. And he was picking on this kid. And you just knew, like, life was not good for this boy. Like, he wasn't that clean. His clothes weren't clean. He was dishevelled. He had holes in his trainers, right? And I'm like, you can feel what he's going through, but it must have him. Like, I'm seeing like how hard it is, and I'm like, well, I'm getting out of jail free here because I've got like a foster parent, and then mum would get herself together. So we were getting little glimmers of hope. This boy was having no hope. But one of the bullies had sort of took it upon himself to really lay into him, and he was like a bit like a hyena, like operating backs. So he would have his sort of cronies round about him. And he had like a sort of hardened up reputation of going and doing this and doing that and doing the next thing. And I still remember standing in the queue. We were standing in the queue, and the boys to my left and the bully was at the front, and he's made his way up and he's really getting stuck into him. And had these hyena cronies, and I'm physically strong by this point. I remember just losing it, and I thought, enough's enough. And I just grabbed the guy's head, and I hit him off this wood paneling, and he's like fell and landed in the ground. And the shock, the look, he's sort of cronies like, what the fuck? And I remember just thinking, I was like, come with me. I'm not going to stand by and watch this. And that's what happens in the world. I'm like, I'm not taking that. I'm not letting that. Like, there's a line that's crossed and you're too far and you're going unchecked. And I remember just losing my temper, and I thought, nah. And that's so much for the hard nut, because he, for all the police chasing him and him carrying weapons and chibs and all this sort of chat, never looked my direction. And he was 2 years older than me.
I was going to say, it's weird, isn't it, how a wee fight like that can put somebody like that in check, because usually they've went so far without being checked. Were you in much fights in high school?
No.
No, was that kind of one of the very few?
A couple of fights. I remember another good teacher. He had, again, usual young team Neds. They were, 20 strong, and it was me and a couple of pals. And he had, he was giving it large, unusual peacocking, and I'd started boxing, so I knew how to throw a punch. And he was just, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do the next thing. So I cracked him, burst his face open, and it was in one end of the school, and there was literally a trail of blood from one end of the school to the other to where the nurse's office was. So this went round like wildfire, and I'm a good student, so the teacher pulled us in, knew who I was, and he knew,
like, I wasn't Geo. I never done anything.
Ed, right? And he's like, right, what happened? And I explained it. Says, let's, take full responsibility. He's saying this, he's saying that. I says, no, let him have it. I says, because I'm not taking that. He's just like, right, I'm going to give you two options, boys. Right, you can either shake and forget about this and pretend it never happened and I never want to hear any more of it again, or you're both getting expelled.
It's so funny. See,
I
pretty much had the exact same story in like first year. Like a boy started me, we got into a fight, pulled into head principal's offices and that, and he's like, what happened? And we said it, and he said the exact same, shaking it. I was like, how you doing now? We're all good. And that was it. No animosity after that sort of stuff. Good to go. So fast forward out of high school, what's the sort of career path that you're choosing at this point? Are you just like, fuck, I need to make money, I need to get a living, I need to start to be, were you edging towards looking after yourself or looking after your brother and sister?
It was more sort of, looking after myself. I mean, I'm sure my brother and sister probably don't want to hear that, but, it was sort of, let's get out into the world, let's get after it. But I was going to pursue the academic route. That was sort of, academia was the way I was going to go, but I looked a little bit older, so I could get into clubs. And when I was, I can't remember, 16, it was 16 or 17, I got a girl pregnant, and I had my first son with 17. So my academic career had hit the handbrake.
Oh, right, okay, right.
So
that makes you grow up fast then. Aye.
It's a baptism of fire, because it was like, right, look, it was never going to work out. Just wasn't to be. And I was like, right, what do we do now? I wanted to be a responsible dad. So I had no clue what being a dad was like, other than, being there for my brother and sister and sort of like literally hanging by your fingernails in terms of getting through your childhood. So this was like out the frying pan into the fire. But, it took me down a career path of, right, where do I want to go? Do I want to go to university? Do I want to go and sort of pursue this academia and see how much more I can develop to, or now I have a responsibility right now and I need to go out and earn money, and that's what put me in the sales roles. So I went around and got a first job, and
is that why you think you lied as well, to kind of get your first job in the sales?
Well, the one that I lied to was the second one. So I worked in a coffee shop for about 2 weekends, and they had a weird setup where you couldn't sell coffee till you were 18. So they gave me the job while I was 16. I was like, right, okay.
It's cleaning tables and all that sort of stuff.
And I went and got a job in Levi's selling jeans. So I was working in a Levi's store, and the manager was he was a really camp gay manager, like a bit burnt out. I mean, brilliant dude, but just totally burnt out. He's came back home from
Retail
London,
man.
and he's been cooked. The gay lifestyle in London and the fucking retail lifestyle in London has cooked.
It's too much.
He's obliterated.
24/7 man. Yeah.
So he's came home, got a job. He's like, right, trying to settle himself down, like probably just trying to rehab himself back to like normality. And he's the manager in the shop, and he took a shine to me, and he's like, look, you're actually really, really good at what you do. He's like, I'm watching what you're doing. He's like, you got a lot of talent. He's like, you're wasted in here. He says you should go and sell mobile phones. He says because mobile phones were the hot thing. And he'd worked in the mobile phone game, made a fortune, and then totally annihilated himself.
He just didn't have it in him.
He gave it a good 5 years and then he was just toast. So he was burning the candle at both ends. And he didn't have family values or kids or anything.
He's just like, fuck it.
He just absolutely wrecked himself. So he's like, you should get into this. So I was like, right, okay, I'll go round. So my 17th birthday, I went round to, I think it was Carphone Warehouse. So I went into the shop and I says, look, can I get an application form? First thing they asked, what age are you? Like 17 today. Like, come back in a year because you need to be 18 to sell contracts. So I was like, right, okay, what, right round the corner, phones for you. Like, I'm looking, you got any vacancies? What age are you? 18. Sell me this pen, right? Sold them the pen. Right, can you come in?
They done that back then, did they? Oh, that sounds
way
like
before John Belfort.
I was going to say, it sounds as if
that.
he's glorified it. So what was your, can you remember your pitch, or did you know anything about sales at this point? Did you just go fucking, you need to write this name?
It was a woman that I'd probably just charmed her. Like, she probably just felt
so.
For me.
It's a wee guy.
Just gave me the benefit of the doubt.
Just gave my job.
This guy needs it.
That's poor boy. Look, I'm going.
That was the worst sales pitch I've ever fucking heard. Give him a job. He needs training.
Give him a try. So the hot shop manager was an area manager in there called Mark Bain, and this guy was just, it was my first ever time that I'd ever seen someone. I know what I've seen now, but then I didn't know, but I knew it was something different about him. I was like, this guy's a rising star.
Yeah.
I just knew that there was something about his energy. And he gave me a phone, like I'd put in the application forms for a part-time job. And I was like, even part-time hours is double what I'm making at full-time over there. So I was like, I'll take whatever you want me to do, I'll do.
Fucking do.
And he interviewed me. He says, look, can you come in for an interview? I was in Livingston. He says, can you come in for an interview? It was in Edinburgh. I says, look, I don't drive. Wasn't letting the cat out of the bag. It was only 17. No driver's license, so on. He's like, welcome to Livingston. Shocking interview, right? Because Mark said this in a nice way. I've shown up in my going out jeans, like black jeans, like Smith, a shirt tucked in, and I was still better dressed than him. A shirt tucked in, no tie, so I look like I'm going for a night out.
You're like, this is fucking. Look at him, look cushy, I look good shit.
So, but I must have got past that because I've impressed Mark that much. He's like, why you want to do it? And I told him, I was like, look, I've been doing this for a year, and I love working at Target. I love the interacting with people. I really enjoy being able to, if I put in a high performance, I can do even better.
Rewarded, yeah.
And he was like, I must have been making all the right noises for him because he was,
buzzword.
Oh. And he says, listen, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to start you. He's like, I'm going to start you in a full-time job. He's like, I want you to come work here full-time. He says, I want you to work here full-time and I want you to come in and see what you can do. He's like, but I'm really looking forward to it. He says, look, wee word of advice, have you got a tie or maybe some proper trousers? And I was like, what do I need to get? And he's like, a bit more smartly dressed. I was like, right, okay. And I don't know. I don't know.
I've literally went into
it. I would nobody I could ask.
Going in blind.
I'm like, who do I ask here? Like, I came literally for a denim shop. This is the best denim they sell.
These are fucking Levi's.
These are the bollocks. But I knew that I was entering another level.
Yeah.
And he was politely saying to me, he's like, look,
step up.
Sort out.
So I was like, where'd you get this stuff? Try River Island. And I remember having my wages and I had 30 quid left. And I spent the 30 quid. Actually, I can't remember if I bought the trousers and stole the tie, or I stole the tie and bought the I can't remember.
Did you?
I remember pinching the tie, and ironically, I gave them my money back. I remember thinking I need to clear that one off.
That's good.
I remember thinking I need to do that.
So you're a big believer in karma?
No.
You know, I thought you would be a guy that would be.
No.
So
what would you give them the money back for?
Just felt right. I didn't think, my world's I'm going to face a fucking car accident because I've stole a tie out of River Island. Like, people's perception of what karma is, I believe there's karmic energy. Right. I believe that there's a karmic energy, and I believe that there's a balance in the universe. I absolutely don't buy into what some people's idea of it is, because they're like, you need to be this whiter than white, angelic, and if you don't make it good, you're ills. And I'm like, no, it's not. I don't think it's like that. So I believe in karmic energy, but I don't believe some people's ideals or ideologies about it. But I just knew that if it felt right, because River Island were lending me that tie so I could go into bigger places, and I thought it'd be nice to reward them back by giving them the money that were due.
So how did you give them it back? Walk in, go, by the way, I stole that tie. Here's the money.
1980.
It's all bitten and chewed.
This is it. Here's the money.
Yeah. And I spoke to the assistant manager and says, look, I've put this in my bag. I forgot to pay for it. So I was like, I just want to make sure like to do the right thing, pay. And they were over the moon. They were like, that's really
fucking hell. Nobody else
just lost $1 million.
I remember the area manager because she had was back in the day when like the streaks were good. And I remember her hair looking like a barcode. And I remember that was all I could focus. I was fucking looking at her hair like, I don't know if that's a zebra or a barcode. But she was lovely. She was really, really nice. And I remember thinking, that's good to do the right thing. But I went on to get a pair of trousers and the tie, and it served me well because the first month I was the top salesman in the shop. And then the second month I was the top salesman in Scotland because it was like, right, I had no experience. The guy
you
came
were
in.
unleashed, you were unleashed.
The guy came in, Derek, that I had him on podcast. He's like he had unbelievable intuition on people and how to read them, and he had this.
Is it Derek who you had on?
Yeah.
Is that who you're talking about?
Derek, yeah.
Oh, is it him? Is it?
So Derek's like, right, I'm going to tell you to do this, and you do exactly what I tell you. I was like, okay, and I literally done everything that he said.
Got you.
And he was, and what Derek had nailed, that he'd nailed his formula on how to do it. And that came from people that he'd learned from that were the best of the best of the best.
Mm-hmm.
So he was passing the wisdom on down to me.
It was your turn to.
And he was like, right, this is what to do. And
he gave you everything at once.
We joke about it because he had me in the back counting SIM cards in the phone cage.
Right.
There was no requirement for me to count SIM cards, but he just wanted me to be
aware of that stuff.
He was like, right, this is what, if I tell you to do something, you do it. And I'm like, right, cool.
Right.
And he was like, what's the number of SIM cards? So I would like, the number, 83. Like, cool. And he would mark it down. Didn't need to do it, but he's drilling the discipline and he's like, right, we're going to sharpen this rough diamond. And it was a very, very rough diamond, in fairness. So that was the sort of things that happened in the phone shop. But, I understood about reading data, to understand about performance, to understand about how important it was to have a structure, and it being in this just environment of a multitude of different people that were extremely talented, that were having wildly different results. And imagine what it's like at 17. I'm like, I thought you used to all be like figured out and dialed in.
Crazy.
And I'm coming from the chaos and madness thinking, right, I'm trying to get this
I'm all over the place.
Like, I'm trying to get this figured out, and you're even worse than I am. And I'm like, you just, how can you be like this? You've got money, you've got a job, like you should have life, like you should sorted have it, sort of like really, really
dialed in.
So it was a wild experience. And bearing in mind, I've got that in my mind. After people talk about imposter syndrome, like I didn't ever feel like I was a fucking imposter. I was like, I'm giving this a crack. But the closest that I would have probably felt to the imposter syndrome, I shouldn't be here. I thought, I'll give it a go. And bearing in mind, I'm gung-ho. I've told them a lie about my age.
Right? You've got a lot going against you.
Swinging it out there, right? And I'm getting this headline of, right, here's this hot shot that's doing this. I'm counting SIM cards on a phone cage for no idea what, but I'm just getting it done.
Just giving everything a try.
I'm just like, right, I'm doing it. And the thing that I'm thinking is, right, if I can be really good, if I count the SIM cards, right, and I get this done, if HR ever get wind of this, then maybe they'll give me a pass.
Because the performances outperform your actual.
You're fine. You can stay.
Yeah. So, and I thought, well, I'll read the data, I'll understand, and that's when I started to figure out opportunities where you could spot opportunities that people would miss. And that's what you do when you're trading. You're like, where have they missed the opportunity? What can you spot? What can you tell from this picture that there's something in there that hasn't quite been figured out? And I look back then, and that's what I was doing then. It was simple things like you would get people that would have, back at that time, people would get a contract for a year. So they would buy their phone, they would have a contract for a year, and then they would renew it after a year. So no one was phoning the customers to say, it's bonkers because now I always get a phone call. Nobody was phoning about their customers. So what would happen is they would stay on the contract and they would roll in. So I would print off the year before. So say we were in the month of March, I would print off the whole of March from last year and be like, just to let you, and again, it was wee tips and tricks that I'd learned from
strategies that start to put together.
Derek would be like, this is how you say it, because if you say it in this way, you see how this is different for that. And I'm like,
it's mad. It's crazy.
Now you mention it. So I would, rather than saying, hey, look, hi, Mr. Smith, you bought a phone from us last year, just to let you know you're eligible for an upgrade if you would like one. So he'd be like, well, great, there's no hook, there's no reason for him to come in the store. I'd phone, hi, Mr. Smith, just to let you know, head office has sent out the delivery for your new handset. So you have to come in, we've got a choice of 3. You can pick it completely free of charge. You know, if you come in today,
you just re-signing the contract.
We'll get you a, we'll give you a you know, in-car charger and a carry case. I'll be down there now. And it was that how you put it across to people, and then you were building relationships with these people because be like, oh, really, really good. Thanks for phoning me. That's great. And it'd be like, the
next time you are there.
Well, I had a wee sideline where I was making a bit of cash because I'd say, what are you going to do with your old phone? And I'm like, if you can either keep it, if you're going to stick it in the drawer, I'll buy it off you. And then I was selling the phones for profit. I was selling them on for profit. I didn't tell anybody in phones for you I was doing that.
Nah, you've lied about your ages.
Because I'm thinking, what are you going to do with your phone? Like, you would ask people, you build up a wee bit of rapport, like, what are you going to do? Like, I don't know. Like, or some people, like, I'll give it to my son. Or like, if you're not using it, I'll buy it off you. So look, if you want.
So how long were you there for?
I was there for, I think, maybe 18 months.
Right. So this is kind of the first time in life that real money, you're making real money, you're getting rewarded for the graft that you're putting in. What does it look like kind of being like a young dad at this point as well? Like, how is that mixing in? Was that maybe the hard thing to balance? Like, the phone was almost like that world was like, here, I'm good at this. And you go back and you're like, fucking no idea what I'm doing here.
I worked pretty much, unless I was leaving the country, I worked 7 days a week, so I didn't take any days off. You know, I never really thought. My idea is that it was always going to be, I always had a time bomb. This thing was going to go off at any point. So I was like, right, look, I need to go and work and maximize this, because if I get rumbled, then what do I do? What do I do? And bearing in mind, I had to get from 17 to 18, and I was only there that first 12 months. It was like,
it could be tomorrow.
It could be any day that I might get found out here. So I want to try and bank as much of this and squirrel it away, you know, because it's a good thing. You know, let's ride this out and see where it goes. So it was a case of maximizing that opportunity, and I didn't want to be like, oh, let's take a weekend off and do this and do that and do the next thing. It was like, no, let's double down. I'm like, what was I going to do? I mean, like, I didn't have any hobbies or any, like, I didn't really know much. You know, I went from, you know, academia to my first job, and then I'm in this wild, high speed, you know, environment that I'm like, I'll go at this flat out. You know, and knew very, very, very early on that, you know, there wasn't going to be it was going to be, oh, well, we're going to be apart, and we'll bring up my oldest son.
You split up fairly early on then at this point?
Very early on. It was very apparent it wasn't going to work out. Two very different kind of people. But
how's your relationship with him?
Good, really good.
How was it growing up? Is there any part of you when you look back at that, you're like, man, I wish I had a wee bit more time, knowing, because you've got 2 young kids now.
Yep.
And I guess, let's be honest, you're never going to be perfect in your first kid bringing up. Any parent you speak to, it's like the second kid's kind of raised a wee bit more differently to the first, and then so on and so forth.
It's like that thing is that I'm eternally grateful for, you know, for him coming along, because it let me figure out really early what I needed to do as a parent. And the best thing you do as a parent is be there.
Yeah.
The number one thing that you can do, and I'm probably lucky that I remember the generation before social media and the addiction to phones and all that sort of thing. So I can see it from the perspective. I can see the transition, and I can see when kids just, you know, their parents are there but not engaged.
Not there.
And you can be there. And, you know, I would have loved to have spent more actual time as a dad, but I was this, you know, hungry, high flying, you know, youngster that was trying to make moves.
Yeah.
And it, you know, that was probably the sacrifice that I had to make. You know, that is one of the things looking back, going, you know, was it the right call? Was it the right thing to do? But one of the things I would say that, you know, that's something that will happen for a lot of parents. Right? And if you are going to make that sacrifice, then when you do spend that time with your son or daughter or children, whatever your particular combination is, be really there for them.
Yeah, glad you'll be
Right
present.
in there. And I don't think I got that right all the time, but I remember working on it.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy, especially when, you know, the phone's going off the hook and people are, you know, in business and this sort of thing. So it's hard, but like I knew that it was a case of really spending those moments when I talked to Blake, you know, looking back, it's when you speak to him and he says, you remember this, you remember this, you remember this, you remember this. There's maybe not a lot of hours in terms of time, in terms of, you know, we put a huge quantity in, but there's a high amount of high quality, you know,
that's what matters
in there.
That's the memory.
You know, I go, well, you know, that's probably quite good. And the thing is that set me up.
I was going to say, imagine if you weren't a father, right, at this point, you're getting this money in, and then I can imagine that world is, you said it's hectic, but I can imagine the party lifestyle is probably equally as hectic, or were they all pretty driven, like 7 days a week, commit? Did they work hard and play hard, or did you not get roped into that in that?
What do you mean in the...
I just mean if you didn't have a kid, I can imagine like your week, not that your weekends would be freer, but you would, you know, going back to like a young son, like you would have, what do you want to do? Like, oh, fuck it, let's go out, let's drink, because I've got this disposable income that I've never seen before. So I guess in a way that kind of shaped that.
I was really lucky in terms of I met my wife when I was 21, so I met her really quite young.
That was going to be my next question. How did you guys meet?
So, you know, probably like going out. I was going.
Was
out,
it?
You know, and I would like to. I would, when I moved to C.R. Smith, they'd headhunted me from the mobile phone shop. So I mean, I was making ripples of, right, this kid's got something.
Is this just, what's C.R. Smith? Is that
it's a home improvements company?
Right.
So
Okay.
they were like, can you go out and see our clients and sell them our products? I was like, right, okay. And it was another step up, because it was another higher degree of your presentation needs to be immaculate. Excuse me.
So you stole a tie for Slaters this time?
No, I went for the full suit. I got to try it on. I wasn't satisfied with just getting a tie.
Yeah.
So they were like, you know, they were talking about the Harvard Business School and the length of your tie and clean shaven.
Oh, that,
I mean, very, very, very particular.
Did you miss this from your dad not being around then growing up? Were these principles, or do you not think?
I didn't know.
I
didn't
was
know.
all right, cool.
And the thing being is that I was, when at that point in time, I was around guys that would have been my dad's age. So, you know, and
I kind of replaced that role model in a way.
I had somebody to reference from. And it's more, I would say they were more like big brothers than they were like a father figure.
Yeah.
But they were more like brotherly because they were in the rough and tumble like you, but they were giving you, passing you on the wisdom. So I'd like sort of that relationship. And when the youngest ever employed guy at C.R. Smith doing the role that they'd asked me to fill was 34, and here's me at 18. And, you know, so they had some perceptions.
I was going to say, did they look at you funny at the start?
Was
this
they were like, it was
stocky guy.
It was said, right, do you know anybody that'd be good for, you know, to bring in? So my name was thrown about, and when they heard my age, they were like, nah.
Too young.
No chance.
Too young.
Is that when Phones for You found it?
No.
Like, how's this 18-year-old leaving now? How's he still 18? He's been 18 for years.
What year is it? He's turning 21. Is that still 18? What year is it in Phones for You?
2004.
So it's about 2005 they started going under, eh? So when you left,
I got a timing's
fucking
everything.
downhill after that,
Timing's
eh?
everything. Like as soon as I left, it was gone.
Right. So getting headhunted, then having this perception, what's that like for a young guy at that point? Are you try to impress him? Like what's going through your mind? Are you intimidated, or are you?
It's funny because I went to see a guy also called Mark Orwin. He done my interview, and Mark was just, you know, when somebody takes a shine to you. But Mark said years later, he says, I seen me and you. I was looking at a younger version of myself, you know, and I was just, the thing that I had was I was enthusiastic and I was hungry. Now, the things I had against me was there was a certain degree of volatility still in me. I had rough edges. But if I put that attention into what I was doing, which needed nurtured by the likes of these guys that were in there, great results would happen. So
I was going to say, what do you think your rough edges are at this point? Like, so the volatility, how is that showing up?
Mostly through lack of conformity. I had a very, very difficult time conforming. This whole, you need to do this because we've said so.
So
you know, the whole, you'll know it if you worked in a corporate environment, you need to do this. And I'd be like, why? Like,
yeah, it's your independent nature of like, look, I've been the man of the household that controls and makes the decisions to do what you want.
It was a bit further than that. It was a case of they were saying you to do something and it wasn't clear why you were doing it. And it seemed to be, right, are you doing this because you want to have draconian control over me, or you want to prove that like people are your
so you've always been rebellious.
I've always been rebellious, but at the same time I can be persuaded and influenced if I believe in it. So it was a case of, I wouldn't accept you need to do this because I tell you, but if you said, look, we need to do this because this is the result we're going to get and be a really great help. And if you if you let me understand what it was, I would be your best, you would be the first guy in. But if you were, being a tosser about it, I would be your worst nightmare. So that they were the things that I suffered from. And the usual things like I was young, red-blooded. I just had that youth. I had that sort of arrogance of youth in me.
What do these old farts know?
Yeah, and it's just that you just look at him like, you'd be like, what are you fucking talking about, you dick? You don't even lift. You're fat. You're out of shape. I'm putting in big figures here. You just want to sit there and just call meetings for the sake of it. A lot of the things that annoyed me was wasting time, and it'd be a huge amount of that. I mean, you've seen that where people just call meetings for the sake of it, and a lot of the time, I understand it now, and I didn't understand it then. I understand what they were trying to do now because, the benefit of age and wisdom, I can see exactly what they were doing. And if they'd made it obvious and clear to me, which they probably didn't need to do because they're hoping to bring in guys that were much older than me, but I'm just accepted it. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, they would just call you in for the sake of calling you in and give you a roasting, and then I still remember there was a boardroom meeting. There was 45 of us in this boardroom, and the manager had prepped us before it. It was like, do not say a fucking word in here, right? Don't
Stock prices are at risk.
Fucking word, right? The owner's going to go off his fucking tits. Let him go off his tits. Don't say a thing. Right, okay. It's in the boardroom, right? And he starts going off in one, and he's saying that basically we're doing shit. Right, now I wasn't fucking taking any of that.
Because you're killing it. You're out in the field. You're hitting the numbers, I would imagine.
I wasn't saying any of that. And he said something where he's like, he says like, Denny's think you're a good salesman. No. Denny's think he's a good salesman. Tumbleweed. Nobody said anything. He's like, I asked you the questions. Denny's think he's a good salesman. I was like, I think I'm a good salesman. I could just see the fucking ring.
For fuck's sake, Geo. Who hired him?
Fucking hell, here we go. Did you tell him? Did you fucking tell him not to say a word? Be fucking in the bistro by now. This is going to go Pete Tong. So he said, Denny's think he's a good. I says, I think I'm quite good. He said, why do you think you're good? And I pulled out my sheets that I'd filled in. I says, well, here's all the calls that I've went to. They were tough calls. They were hard to sell. Right, and I says, I actually think I'm good because I've done a good job there. He's like, you had something to eat? I says, no yet. He says, I'll see you in the bistro. He says, you can go.
Aye.
Right. And that was it. I was like, fucking hell. So
no,
I'm down there.
Fucking beauty.
The glass window.
Am I fucking fired? Like, is that's the weirdest fucking sacking I've ever seen.
Whereas now, you realise,
right, so
actually what was happening.
He went fucking ballistic at the rest of them. And he says, see if I brought in these joiners here that work for me, and I says, who's the best joiner? There would be a fucking Royal Rumble at who was
corporate politics.
Who was the fucking best? There would be literally fucking fights going on. And look at these, she's a question. None of these will pipe up. None of these. And there's me, and now I'm like, how do I look when the guys come out?
Nobody likes you.
Nobody, right?
Oh, you're a prick.
But I got the same guy, Gerard, asked me to go to Aberdeen. The whole team had left up there. I was a mutiny, and he's like, can you go up on Monday? Offered me a package. And he's like, I want you to go up and solve the situation. I was like, right, okay, I'll go up. He's like, pack your toothbrush. So I tried to negotiate a better deal. He basically told me to get the fuck out of his office and go and get my stuff in the car. I was like, right, okay, it's worth a shot. Back down. I was like, that'll be good.
Dick between your legs, like, hi guys, I'm back.
That'll be that. So sound.
So did he fell at you? No, he was just like, that's it. That's
the
what
thing
you're
being
getting.
is like, for as much as I was contentious and volatile, they fucking liked it. They liked that fire.
They're making the money.
But they liked that there was a fire in me. They liked, because
challenging the
for
norm
as much
as
as
well.
that is you just knew there was fight in this dog. There was fight in there. It's like, we can nurture him, like, we can smooth off the rough edges, but we know that there's a bit in there. There's that woof.
He's always going to be back. He's always coming back.
So
How many years were you there?
I was there a good few years. I think I was there maybe 5 years, 6 years, something like that. So in the background, what had happened was a great story about a guy that I'd met in the phone shop. So just before I'd left the phone shop, you got to see everybody. There's 2 points in my life that I remember very, very well. Right, and the first one was in foster care. We were supposed to go on a day trip with my brother's foster carer, her son, and my brother, and we were going to go on the Intercity 225. A train that went from Glasgow to Edinburgh. I was fascinated by trains. I asked if I'd love to go along. I said I would love to go. So the idea was a day out in Edinburgh, go on this really good train, and it would be cool. But it got cancelled. So invited down, we started playing Monopoly. I'd never played Monopoly before. Well, that was a fucking tragic error on their part, getting me to play Monopoly, because as yet anyone that's played Monopoly, it goes on forever.
Fucking ages.
It gets tense and vicious.
Did you have the 4 city blocks
I
and
had
the properties on every corner?
I'm reading the rule book. When can I put a hotel down here? I am wiping everybody out.
Mayfair Street is mine on the first row.
I had the green and the purple were mine. I had it sewn up. You could not come through that bit of the board. You better roll a 12 or you're mine. I'm wiping you out. You need to mortgage your houses. They get the bank to give you a loan. You will not collect £200. You are mine.
So AG then?
Probably 11.
That's the first time, kind of. Aye, there's definitely a dog in there. And then, so that was one of your
I remember
memories.
thinking to myself back then, I thought, imagine doing this in real life.
I know.
Can you imagine? How did they make up this game? It was like, well, this is the whole idea that there's bankers and there's this and this.
Well, imagine that, exactly.
There's
Imagine,
people that do this.
imagine someone's telling you that at that point, like how different that would have shaped your path and the journey that you ended up
I'm
going
playing
on.
fucking snakes and ladders. Like, I don't know if there's like, do you slide in a snake? It's made up. Then you get this board game. They're like, no, there's real people that do this in real life. You got to be shitting me. Like, board games are made up.
You know, they're not real. It's a game.
It's Ludo.
It's a game.
Like, who plays Ludo in real life? It's like snakes and ladders. Indiana Jones. I've seen the movie. I don't think that's real.
Nah, it's a wee bit different.
And then they're like, no, this is like close to real life. And I was like, oh. And then years later, goes in the just about to leave the phone shop. Guy comes in with his son. Bear in mind, I'm still, I think, 17 going into 18. And this guy's brought his son in. His son's 16. Now, in the phone shop, you spoke to everybody. You spoke to the junkie, the alcoholic, all the way through to the CEO, business owners. So you had a feel for what people were like. You knew. Remember I said, like, people never believe in a painter or decorator. They know. Right, well, you knew, you were fine-tuning this. So it's that initial response, like, "Hi, how you doing? What you looking for?" And you would get to know people. I remember there was something about this. There was some way that he carried himself. It was just something just easy and casual and just very sure about himself. I wonder what he does. So this is what you're looking for. He's like, I'm thinking about getting my son a phone now. This would be the version of the iPhone 15 Pro Max,
Top
10 gigabyte, fucking a terabyte of memory, cameras for days, the whole 9 yards. This was the thing. Right? There was a Nokia 8850. It slid up, it was metal cased.
Right.
Dream phone. Fortunes. So I says, look, right, okay. And he says, well, grab a seat and I'll get one out and I'll show you, make sure you like it. Get me touch it, feel it, get build the dream
sales pitch
perception.
they're
not going to hand you that back. They're like, no, I've come in for this. So I'm like, right, okay. It's like, when we'll get it out, because it's impressive. It looked good. You're like, whoa, I fucking wanted to see it. We never brought these out. They were too dear. Nobody could afford them. So shows him the phone. It's like, what are you thinking about doing? I'm going to buy it for my son. I says, look, if I could save you some money, would you be interested? The whole idea here would be, if I sold him this phone, as in he bought the handset outright, no money,
you need
no commission. If I sold him this handset, which would be cheaper for him, I would get a commission of 40 quid. Right? So 40 quid was on the line here. Now, I would chase a fiver down the shopping centre, right? There is 40 quid stapled on this guy's back and he's not leaving until I get it. Right, so this was the attitude that I had when people came in, and how Phones For You bonus structure worked was, if your target was to sell 40 phones, if you had 40 phones, you would get this percentage of commission. If you sold 80 phones, it was called the double bubble, so you'd be paid double the commission.
And that's like uncapped.
Right, so we are talking, I am all out, right? They could stop any time. Right, I've never had money like this. This guy's got 40 quid attached to his back. If I hit target, it's going to 80.
Aye.
Right, so we're on. And I'm like, right, we're starting to put this stuff down. I was like, right, look, so your son's currently got a pay-as-you-go, it's costing this much money. You want to buy this phone at 650 quid. Right, here's a contract that is cheaper than what he's paying on the pay-as-you-go. Right, you don't need top up, you don't need any hassle. I can give you this phone for 250 quid. So he's going to save money on the pay-as-you-go, and you're going to save 400 quid on buying this phone. Right, I was fucking applauding myself inside. I was like,
who's not going to take
pitch.
that?
Easy.
I was like, just
easy.
You just want to turn around and let me take that fucking 40 quid off you.
Aye.
Right, and he's like, I says, that's really good. He says, I think we'll just buy the phone. And I'm like, what? How? Like, if I said something wrong? It's like,
You're saving all this money.
It's loads more money doing it that way. He's like, that's all right. I was like, you must be loaded. He's like, I've done all right. Now I'm intrigued. Now I'm like,
what's going on?
I fucking forget the 40 quid. How are you so loaded?
Aye.
Because even the hungry business people would be up for a deal.
Everybody's always looking for a deal.
They'd be like, oh, you can save me 400 quid.
Easy.
We're on. And he's like just throwing this money away. So I says, right, okay. He says, like, if you don't mind me asking, like, what do you do? He says, like, I'm into property. What does that mean?
Like what?
I'm like,
you walk in them?
I've lost my keys. I've got in the window of a property, and I mostly go through the door. That's in property. What do you mean? So he goes, tell me he's a property developer, property investor. He buys stuff, rents it out, sells it, develops land. And now I'm like, my mind's fucking blown. I'm like, wow. I was like, you take it you do really well. He's like, I've done all right. So I think to myself, well, that's that. Fuck, 10, 40 quid's gone. He hands me a Black American Express. Now, the first thing that's about a Black American Express is I've never seen one. Another thing is it's got a weirdly short number. Right. So the number doesn't look like a normal debit card number or credit card number that's 16 digits. I'm looking at this card and I'm like, is James Bond fucking in front of me? I'm like,
what's the criteria for a Black American Express again?
I asked the guy what the criteria was, because I'd said to him, I says, what the fuck is this thing? I says, is this going to blow up my PDQ machine? Like, I've never seen it. Like, genuinely, is this a credit card or a debit card? He says it's an American Express. I was like, right, okay, I've seen American Express. Doesn't look like this. He's like, well, that's you need to be invited to get one of these. So I was like, how do you get invited? Well, fucking, I'm 70. I'm like, how would you get invited? Thinking,
just bought your first tie the week before.
Like, you fill it in. Like, what would you do? And he's like, no, you need to be invited to get one. I said, like, what do you need to do to get one? He says, well, first of all, you need to have had an American Express. Then you need to have liquid assets of 5 million quid or above, meaning that you need to have at least £5 million of assets that you can liquidate easily in American Express's criteria before they'll give you one. I was like, oh, fuck it, here we go.
I'm a clown.
I was like, I've just tried to save him 400 quid. I feel like a small worm on a big hook. I was like, so how did, like, I said, this thing, I must have some credit limit on it. Because I would photocopy credit card statements, you would see the limit on the statement. So this thing
zeros off the page.
This must be huge. He's like, it's not got a limit. What do you mean it's not got a limit? He says, I need to spend over £500,000 before American Express will give me a limit. I was like, I feel really sheepish trying to save you 400 quid.
Is that what you said to him?
I said, listen, I hope you don't mind. This is, I feel really, really sheepish for trying to save you 400
But do you still want the 400 quid off?
It's still there.
Because I need the 40 quid off you.
It's still there.
Aye.
And I remember thinking to myself, I says, listen, made sure I was at earshot. I says, listen, there's guys here, you know, in their 40s. They're passing the money up against the wall. They're buying suits every day. I saw the show and the Peacock and all that sort of stuff. Cars and drink and bars and all that sort of stuff. I was like, what advice would you give a young guy starting out? I was like, because I'm young, I'm doing all right, make relatively decent money. You know, as a young dude, like, what would you recommend? So he's taking my sheet. I would always turn the paper on its side and I'd write out why this was. I would pitch them the deal. I'd be like, right, this is the cost. This is how much you're getting. I would break it down. We'd call it landscaping it, so we'd make it easy to see. And he's looked at the way I've pitched it, and he's looking at the way I've laid out the numbers, and he says, I'm going to give you a bit of advice here. He says, I've looked at the way that you've structured this deal. He says, when you go out and have a look in estate agents' windows, go and find a property you like, buy it and rent it out. He says, you're going to figure out the rest. I was like, roger that. So I went round to, between the time of going from Phones For You into C.R. Smith, I'd followed the instructions, started looking about, went and seen a property, you know, nice luxury flat in the area it was from. It's like, right, I'll go and meet the seller. Met the seller, negotiated $8,000 off the price. Basically, that was me. I am now Lord Sugar. I've got $8,000
taking over the world.
Visions of the Monopoly board. The fucking hotels are going up. I'm like, we are in. We are in. And then that was me. It's still to this day, it's the worst deal I've ever bought. But it started me off.
Started you.
And that was the start. And I remember like the thought process of buying that property at, you know, 19, buying the property, renting out, all the what's ifs. What if they don't pay? What if they trash your flat? What if it's a fucking dodgy tenant? What if you get repairs? What if this needs replaced? And so on and so on and so on and so on. And then 6 months later, it was like,
next.
Everything was fine. They'd paid the money. The house wasn't trashed. I was like, fuck, nothing bad happened. And that set off the, concurrently while working, was let's look into this property thing. Let's develop this.
Yeah. So they're the two moments in life that you can think to. Is that once you got that first property, did that just snowball and kind of lead to? Because I think if we kind of go through each chapter of your life, we could spend about 8 hours here. But did that just compound then? Like over that?
No, initially because I'd bought 2 properties, and then I started to need to think about what I was doing, because I didn't understand how this machine worked.
Right.
So the property machine, I was now out the typical environment, which was I could go to people that they knew their expertise in their field, which was high performance sales, dealing with people, how to read people, how to understand human nature. Because that essentially is what it was. Relationships, rapports, and all that type of thing. And then I was moving into this weird world of property investment and why it was a good idea. And it really came, you know, I came onto it at that point because I'd seen that guy, and Derek had started buying properties.
As well, yeah. But
Derek was a novice at it. And now, like, the guy was away into the wind with his new 650 quid phone that I never got 40 quid for. So I remember thinking to myself, like, what do I do now? So I started to look into how this market worked. But like the encyclopedia, I started to learn about it. And I could see the cracks starting to form. So through 06, 07, I'm like, this looks like there's something up here.
Is this after you bought your first one?
I bought 2 properties, 05 and 06. But then there was starting to get out of hand with prices. Like, stuff was going up ridiculously quick.
So back then, obviously not experiencing a crash and going through all that, what is the signs? Because obviously you're seeing some of them come through the now, which we'll come on to in a wee sec, but back then, what were you seeing? That is it just prices going through the roof and them coming flying off the market? Or
it's a bit like when you seen something that was available for sale and people would rush to get it. There'd be this mad rush and people would start to have this sort of euphoric at any cost mentality, and there would be what would be displayed, and it started to look like that. Like the fundamental reasons of why you would do it were starting to exit people's thoughts, and it was a case of this sort of speculation that was getting fueled by no fundamentals at all.
Yeah.
So like a basic way of looking at it would be, how much do you need to buy this property? How much is it to buy? What will it cost me to buy it? And how much can I make from it? And that was starting to disconnect. So now I was starting to look at the sums of it, right? So I bought that property. It made sense because I paid X, I rent it for Y, and that makes sense. But what I was starting to see was these prices were starting to go parabolic. And as you were paying more and more prices, it was crushing the margin of why you would do it. And I thought, why would it go like this? And it didn't make any sense. And then I was starting to realise that the market was getting pushed by euphoria rather than common sense. So that's when I thought, I need to understand this, because although, you know, looking back, I got it right at the time. I still don't know.
You're confused.
I don't actually know. Like, truth be told, I don't understand enough about this. So that's when I started to seek out, you know, because my format was speak to somebody that's older, that's been there, done it, got the t-shirt. So we started to seek the counsel of people that had been in the game, you know, and I thought, right, let me just hang off here and keep the powder dry, because it was still working, it was still banking good money, it was still making good money. And I thought, right, I can get into this market anytime I want. I don't need to be in it right now. So let me figure it out. Let me go and find out what I'm doing, and let me see how this plays out. Thinking, right, it'll lose a bit of steam.
Yeah.
And it actually done the opposite. It fucking gained steam, it went even steeper. You know, and the initial thought is, if I missed the boat, right? But you know, I was pretty comfortable with that, because I thought, I actually don't really know what boat I'm getting on and where it goes. So it was that time where I thought, let's keep a bit of common sense and not rush into it, and really started to figure out more about the world of investing. And that was where I really started to find my kind of calling, you know, in the study, in the learning. I remember chance encounter. I was talking to my pal when we were in Turkey. We were on holiday in Turkey, and women had overheard us talking about property, and she says, "Have you ever read Rich Dad Poor Dad?" I was like, "I don't know what that is." She's like, "Give that a read." Didn't know the women for Adam. That was all she said. Right,
way off in the wilderness.
That was me. I've got this book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, and started it. I was like, oh. So I didn't actually have the, you know, mentor, big brother, father figure as such, but I now had a book where a guy had wrote all the wisdom down. That was me on the hunt, on the prowl. It was like, oh yes, we're getting some steam. And that was when I started to think about, right, I think this thing's going to crash because it's starting to look crazy. So what happens, and how do I prepare for when it crashes? So I thought, I'll just sit all back of the bus here, banking cash, making money, and then when this thing implodes, that's when it's time to step in. You know, for the Rothschilds, have never been known for doing great things. A great statement that Baron Rothschild said was, you know, buy when there's blood on the streets. I certainly didn't want to buy into the war, so I thought, well, if you're going to buy at some point, you might as well buy after it's sort of detonated itself. So that's what I was doing at that point.
What did that do to your portfolio as a whole then? Like did that so on that incline, you're like, okay, maybe add another property and another property, holding off for that amount of time. In terms of like financially, how far did that step you forward? Because I think that's a hard thing to communicate to people just now. So people are still thinking,
well, how it looks at the time. So I've got business partners that have bought at that point in time, and they regret it.
Right.
And how it would have looked then is, you're missing the fucking boat here. This thing keeps going up. We're buying these and they're going up and up.
It's almost
and up.
like the crypto boost there. That's why you know.
Exactly the same.
But this is what I mean is, like, when people are there on, like, when you start to hear the postie talking about buying into something, you should sell out.
It's too late once it's comment. That's a fair point.
It's far too.
When you hear from someone suggesting you should do something that they have no business of knowing anything about.
My dad, the joiner, when he's talking about crypto, is like, I've missed my turn. I've missed it. You should buy that NFT, mate.
I get that NFT sold.
It was the same thing.
Exactly.
The house market was the same thing, and I remember.
Was this 08 then, the recession?
Yep, 07. 06 it started. You could see the cracks as far back as 06. I've done some research, and you could actually see them in 05. I just had no clue about it. I was completely, I was completely wet behind the ears at that point. My intuition peaked at, it peaked up in 2006. So I thought, oh, there's something brewing. But I'd no basis for it. It's not like I'd had a power of wisdom.
What age at this point? 20, 21?
21 and 21 in 06.
06.
So I'm 21 in 06, and I'm sort of getting the sense something's up. More intuition than experience and wisdom. And I thought, oh, here we go. And that's when I started to ask around. Read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I read all of his books because I'm looking to soak in this wisdom. And I thought, fucking hell, this is more complicated than I thought. Because I thought it was just like, you would talk to people like, oh, you just get any property, just up. It goes up. I'm thinking, this is only one way like this. And this is before the internet, social media, like internet as it is known now, YouTube videos and all that sort of stuff. There is none of that. Like, you're going to textbooks, books, or people out there that have done it. Like, there's the whole idea of just stick on a YouTube video and you get like some guy that's put 100 hours work into all that experience and amalgamated it into an hour video. None of that.
No.
So this was like boots on the ground. You would need to, you would need to go out and meet people and find out what they were doing.
Spend your time. You need to put in the graft. Who's the players in property back then? Are they still about today?
There's very few of them because I mean the player, like, it was like a complete wipeout. I mean, I arrived on the scene. In 08, and I'm like, this thing is fucking about to explode. So in 08 and really went into it in 09. So went full tilt in 09, and it was like a nuclear wasteland. I caught the tail end of the people that still thought it was going to recover, and there was lots of them.
Oh really? Because you missed the first wave. Like, now I'll hold off. Second wave, another wee bit of FOMO strikes, more FOMO, and you're like, nah, fuck it, I'm in.
So in investing, it's called the false dawn. So what happens is they believe that it's went and it's got as bad as it can be, and then it lifts up a little bit. It's called the false dawn, which is like you think it's going to go, and then it just goes off a cliff,
back down again.
Right, and I'd caught the false dawn, and there's guys that are hanging on like it's going to change, it's all going back. I don't worry. I've spoke to the surveyor. I spoke to this. I'm in the game that long, and you're hearing it just what we're talking about, the big talk, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm looking at this. I'm looking at what they're saying. I'm like, I don't know how do you come up with that? But that's in the face of these guys have done it. They've got all these properties. They're superstars. People talk highly of them. I'm thinking, nah, man, this doesn't add up.
Weird not to get imposter syndrome at that point, or to jump at that. What do you think goes into the mindset of the person that you are during that time to be able to go
blagging it since the day I played Monopoly?
fair. So you're just like, you know what? Like, if I miss my chance, then so be it. But
I mean, it was the thing being is that when I look back at my life, and I think to myself, all the times if I listen to all the people that, like, what do you hear when you hear imposter syndrome? I shut my eyes and I think imposter syndrome is I don't belong here. Right, and what I hear after that is all the people that said people like us don't get that. That's not for us. That's not for people like us. That's for them, no you. You just don't get above your station. You just do this, all the stuff that later in life I really struggled with. Like, I struggled with the conformity. I struggled to just follow an instruction because you decided that I should follow your instruction. Yep. I struggled with all of that, and it's probably because I had this self-belief that why can I not get it? Like, somebody else can go get it.
It was the other way.
I can tell you when it happened. I can tell you when I remember. I stayed in Dedridge. We were in a temporary accommodation. A friend that was called Frank. And he went in for Frank. It was a beautiful, really warm day, roasting hot. And we thought, right, let's go make some money at 6 because we're entrepreneurs, right? Got a sponge and a bucket of water. We put some washing up liquid in it, and we'll go and wash cars for like 20 pence, hitting the big time at 6. It was cooking, absolutely roasting warm. I thought, if we get enough to buy some ice balls, we have hit the big time. Like, so there was no chance I was getting money for ice balls. So I was like, we'll find a way to get some ice balls, boys. We'll find a way. Yeah. Frank had a good chance because his dad was an electrician, so there was a plan B. There was an exit strategy.
We're just going to ask.
Should this go wrong, we'll go and you'll plead our case. His dad was at work cooking and melting somewhere. So we thought, right, let's give it a chance. So we were out with the bucket and washing the cars, and and I remember washing the cars, and I remember thinking, why is it some people, like, I've got a mum, right, and we don't have a car, and a house, has got the basic essentials, and then you would go and see somebody that had a mum and a dad, maybe they had a car or not. And you'd see some people had a mum and a dad, and they'd have a car. And then you'd see some people had a mum and a dad, and they'd have 2 cars. And I was like, I wonder why there's differences. And you would speak to them, or you'd see them, and you thought, I don't think there's anything any different. Yeah, there's nothing obviously different.
Oh, humans.
There seems to have been choices or decisions that are made that are different. And I can see that just from washing the cars. And I still remember it to this day. And I think, I wonder why that is. But not in just a very innocent child like me.
It's like curious, just like pure curiosity.
I wonder why they have 2 cars. Like, I wonder what it is. I wonder what they've decided. I wonder what they've chose. And I remember thinking to myself, I wonder what that might be. And that little curious, innocent thought stuck with me, and it was the burning ember that would not take the, you'll do what I say, don't get above your station, don't think that you're good enough, don't think you should do this, don't think that you can go and do that, don't think you can go and take that other job, don't think you can be better than what I said you are. It didn't balance with me.
Yeah.
And the question was, what do I want to be? Well, I like this one. I'm not really sure I like this one.
Aye.
And people would say, I always to laugh because people would say, like, you know, you should remember your roots. It's like, well, I do remember my roots. I didn't like them, so I left. And if you want to ponder in this cesspool
Stay there.
and stay there, and you want to grab people down and keep them there because it makes you feel better about your decisions, that's on you.
Yeah.
But don't get upset when somebody goes,
leaves
this bit isn't for me. Like, don't get upset with that. Like, they're respectful that your decision that you can stay here, that's up to you. They're not calling you out. Right? If that's you, that's you. Right? But don't try and drag them down because it make you feel better about yourself. Don't do that. Right? And do not kill a wee boy's dream that's washing a car. Like, don't do it. Don't go and do that. Right? How many people out there are doing that to their kids? How many people are doing that as school teachers or a football coach or whatever it is? How many people unknowingly are fucking trampling on a little boy's dream?
Most adults.
And why are they trampling on it? Because somebody fucking trampled on theirs.
It's their insecurities.
Right?
Isn't it?
They trampled on theirs. They made shit decisions. They took the short-term gratification. They took the little things where they went, oh, I'll go to the pub instead of training. I'll go to the pub instead of spend time with kids. I'll go to the pub instead of working. I'll go to the pub instead of improving myself. I'll go to the pub instead of I'll go to the tea in the park instead of grafting. All of those have an accumulative effect. And that accumulation ends up at a point where you're standing and crushing somebody else's dream because you fucked up yours. And I could not go it. I was like,
I even hear it in friend circles. It's not even mentors or that, but in friend circles you'll be talking about something and it's like, oh, I could never do that. And it's like,
how?
Like, not even that. It's like,
cool,
good for you. I'm doing it. High Rocks was a big thing for me. Where kind of hearing people on that, and I was like, and what? Like, I'm doing this for me because I want to try it. And I was like, that was the first time I was like, fucking hell. I was like, I didn't realise how powerful just your circle of friends can be in that scenario. And then you've got the layer of family where you're a wee bit closer and maybe you don't want to, you definitely, well, I think people definitely tiptoe around their family more than they do their friends, whereas their friends will call bullshit on something than we would with family and that sort of stuff. Where are you at just now with the, or when did, through that journey, did you seek property advice and then you were the person that people were seeking out to get advice from? When did that shift? Was that a bit?
That's a funny one because remember the market had crashed and I'd showed up as the sort of new kid on the block. And, you know,
give me them all.
There's people just still like in this mindset of it's going to recover. Right. And then it was a mass exodus. So like all the guys that were there were just gone. And then there was like a core that were left that was sort of like the hardcore. And that was very, very small relative to the size. Yeah. And you would see people that were, you know, and it's good. It's probably good that Instagram and Facebook didn't exist. Because if you'd seen it, you would have seen the big swinging dick kind of lifestyle. And then now they're fucking, you know, delivering for DPD. You know, and it would have been like,
they would have brought a lot of people along with them and sold the dream.
Well, this is the thing. This is the unintended consequences where you see it and you go, look, you need to like just have a bit of humility. Just don't go fucking wild on the flash and the show and the, you know, making the you know, the big splash, because it's, look, you don't know when that'll end. You don't know what will crop up. You don't know what will change, right? If you're attaching your identity to this huge flashy lifestyle, what room are you giving yourself to, if you want to take a step back, or you're like, right, look, let me downsize because I think it's a smart play now so that I can then move later on. But if you're attached to that lifestyle, that's a really difficult move to make.
Yeah.
Where if you're not too flashy and you're not too out there and you go, look, you can pivot to a different position because you've not locked yourself into that. I must have this, I must have the big house, I must have the best car, I must have the newest, latest, greatest, the shiniest toys, the lifestyle, the holiday, the meals, you know, the fucking Instagram stuff. And it's like, well, look, you're not giving yourself any room there. So just be careful that you don't lock yourself into an identity that can sort of put you in a corner.
So who was, can you remember the first time people were asking you for advice because they liked what you were doing, or how did that even come about? Was it just?
Well, the first thing that I done was I had, you know, going through the credit crunch was grim because even people that genuinely were good to go in terms of lending, banks weren't lending.
Touching
so it was a decimation of the market. banks wouldn't lend, deals couldn't be done. So I was, I had bought into a franchise, and that franchise was to deal with this issue that had happened in terms of there's people out there that if you can get a sale achieved quickly, they might accept a discount off the property. And that worked at that point in time because a lot of properties had been bought pre this big massive wave.
So the cash flow and couldn't get the land in, burst.
Exactly. So there was a market rise, and before the market rise, there was lots of people that had bought properties at a really cheap price.
Mm-hmm.
So there was this huge lift and then this crash. So there's people with tiny purchase prices or tiny mortgages that could still take a decent discount off what it was, and it worked for them. Right. So that whole methodology was perfect for that time. So you would say, that's good. We can work something out. So I started to do that, and it made a lot of noise because the attitude countrywide from the people that were involved in that same business was that you couldn't do deals. So I've shown up and I'm like, well, I've done 2 already, and nobody's done a deal across the country. And they're like, how have you managed to do this? This is, well, I phoned up the people. I went through let me find out where you're at. I know how to put together a deal. I know how to speak to people. I know how to communicate well. I know how to understand their point of view. All the experience of what I've just done in the past. And they're like, how are you doing this? And so much so they actually invited me down to their head office. So like, can we see you go on the phone? Because like we're at a complete loss that everybody's basically, their mindset is a deal can't be done.
Who's this?
The company was called A Quick Sale.
Right.
So A Quick Sale, the guy that ran the company, Richard Waters, he was like, look, will you come down to your head office and just, like, the guys they can't believe what's been done. And that was the very first time.
Bullshit.
But they were in, well, it couldn't even call bullshit because I put the deals
unheard
through.
of.
Like, they're like, you imagine there's nothing in the system, and then boop, boop, and they're like, what the fuck was that?
There's that Geo Mcnee again.
And it's like, oh, that's that guy that bought that, that area, and he's just done 2 deals. And they're like, there's no way. Right, there's a credit crunch, nobody's getting lending, there's no deals to be done, the market's just imploded, everything's a disaster, everything's chaos, and everybody is in agreement that it's fucked. Boop, boop. Like, how have you done this? And that was the first time I was asked. But it was more around how I was putting it together, and it was a lot of it was the salesmanship of understanding the art of communication.
Yeah.
And, I would say to people, look, you might be able to sell this if you get it on with an estate agent, but the difficulty is this is what's happening with the lending at the moment. I can either buy it myself or I can find you a buyer, right, that are able to buy it because they're not going to be as affected. So it's up to you whether you can do it, what way you want to go. But if you want it done quickly, then this is what we can do
Options,
it for.
Yeah.
And people loved that you were giving them like the choice. Like, hey, he's helping me out. And
just the way you've structured it and how you communicated
just like
it.
we were saying at the start, it was how you put it across. And then because
there's with the guy with the black card sign on that paper.
Exactly. He was like, you're going to figure this out. Right. And this is what happened when I says, look, this is how I'm doing it. I was like, how are you doing it? Like, we can do this and it's this amount. Okay, bye. Like, no wonder you're not getting a result.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't actually believe that you've been getting a result all that time before, because this is foreign to me.
It's just like, this is rubbish.
And I took how I would structure a deal, how I worked the numbers, and how I spoke to the people, and it was just a perfect combination. And they were like, we're dumbfounded. We're completely dumbfounded.
What's your thoughts on the property industry as it is today? Not necessarily, I know it'd be good to get your views on the market, but more, I don't know if you call them charlatans or more, what would you say? So knowing how small that circle was of the guys who were like, right, we knew, not that you knew what you were doing, but you had the inclinations of what was happening through that first crash, staying in the game and then starting to help and inspire others. Where it's at today, being a kind of young guy and going through some of the courses and that, so many, is that you would think there was about 60 different people in that circle that you talk about that went through that crash. And weirdly enough, I know 30 of those people were in first year in high school during that crash. So what's your thoughts on all of that?
The thing when I started out is there was very little information, and now there's way more information, and there's a term that's bandied about called borrowed authority. Right, borrowed authority, for anybody that hasn't heard it, is right. You clapped a fucking property developer's dog, and now you're borrowing the authority that he has now as your own. And a great way to give you an idea of what that's like is that when I started looking into the world of trading, you would look at, like, say, the financial hub in London, where these investment bankers and traders would that would be their ground zero, that would be their HQ. And it became really apparent that there was lots of them that wouldn't last very long, right? So the attrition rate of people that would get through to the point where they could get involved in the industry was so high that basically only the cream of the crop got through. Out of that cream of the crop, there was very, very, very few of them that made it past 5 years because they would burn out. The market cycle, the average market cycle is around 8 years. So if you imagine it takes 8 years to go through a full cycle, which is, it begins from the last recession, correction or crash, and it goes through, it starts to build up, it gets better, it gets euphoric, it gets too bubbly, it pops, it goes back down, and then it goes back to the start again. That's called the business cycle. So the business cycle is something that happens over 8 years, but if you've only been in the industry for 5, then you have got absolutely no experience of what it's like.
Very biased, distortion. Yeah.
If all you've seen is going up and up and up and up and up, then that's your experience. And a lot of financial traders would only know that it wasn't talent, skill, knowledge, or wisdom they had. They'd essentially rode a wave that was purely the circumstance of the business cycle.
For them.
It wasn't
luck.
actually
Luck. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but luck would be a good way of putting it. So it's not to say that they don't have experience or wisdom, but it's very, very biased to their particular time parameters. And you've got a very different set of wisdom, experiences, and information from someone that was an investment banker that had been through a full business cycle.
Do you think someone who hasn't been through it can still teach it?
No,
you know, but you're a big believer in it. Nah, need the experience, need the reps.
No chance.
Aye.
Not
I thought you would.
chance.
I thought you'd say that, which is weird because, like you said, there's a lot of them.
It's like saying somebody can be a personal trainer if never lifted a weight.
True. Aye.
Right.
Book smart.
Yeah, like it's
There's a big difference. There's a big difference. It's not that, and to be honest, it's not that a personal trainer who's never lifted weights couldn't get someone to make some changes in their life. They absolutely could, but there's a very small keyhole of, like, so much more that you're not thinking about. Walking through the gym doors, being able to do the form correctly, not being...
Where it shows up is when it goes wrong, when it doesn't fit the textbook. And you don't have the experience or wisdom or knowledge of what to do then, because you haven't done it yourself or you haven't been through it. So what happens is you run out of, you go, hey, this isn't the theory, and this is out with the theory, I don't know what to do. So you become a cropper when it doesn't match what you were taught, either by the timing or the textbook. You can just go, look, you don't know what to do. Where if you've got experience, you look, you need to just adjust this, maybe do it with, your Nike or Mac shoes on, or whatever your particular thing is, where you go, look, you can spot it because you know what's going on, because exactly you've made that same mistake, you've made that same error. You have a feel and an understanding of what's going on, because you've done the reps, you've done all the mistakes, you've made all the errors. So you've got your stripes, but it's exact same as anything. The difference between, someone might pull a muscle at worst case scenario if they're a PT, but some people are going out there putting 200, 300, 400 grand on a purchase, maybe doing 5 or 10 of them. Yeah. So that they can be advising people what to do with, 3, 4, 5, 10 million quid's worth of property purchases, going into a bubble that they've never existed in, saying, yeah, it's all going to be fine, it's all going to the top, it's all going to be great.
But sign this contract to say that whatever you do with your money is yours. It's down to you. And your full responsibility.
Yeah, so you need to be a sophisticated investor. It's not financial advice. This is for education purposes only. Past performance isn't an indicator of future returns. Fucking cop out everywhere. Lawyers everywhere are just writing terms on, here's how we've copped out of, right, we'll tell you what we think, we'll take your money off you for doing that, and we're going to cop out with every term and condition here.
The same. It's a blanket statement. So pivoting away from property a wee bit, then back to, when did you meet your lovely wife through this whole mad, crazy journey of where you're at now?
Met her when I was 21. Met her on a Chicago Rock in Livingston. So
love at first sight.
Oh, instant. The instant she says that, she says,
Sure it was. I'm sure there's a wee bit of tail chasing from your end.
no, there was. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I was back. I know it's hard to believe, but I was a good looking guy back in the day. And I asked her out, and she was like, playing hard to get. I was like,
who says no to me?
It was like the guy in the phone shop that was like, no, I'll just pay for the phone. I'm like, what? What do you mean? I was like, you must be.
She told you not at first?
She told me I chased her for 18 months.
What?
I chased her for 18 months. She
Fair
was
play,
having none of it. And I was like, no, I don't think you get it. You're mine.
That's where you were going wrong. You were saying you are mine. She's like, nah, I'm Napties.
I said to her, I says, you're going to need to come to terms with this. Like, you're mine.
She's phoning the police, getting the restraining order.
He's outside my house again.
Says you can phone them. I've told them as well. Like if you get lost, they're bringing you to me.
We're basically married.
So was it 18 months you were trying after?
Definitely a good year, probably a year to 18 months. So she was like, you're just too much a party animal. Like, I don't know if you're at it, and I was like, no, like I'm interested, I'm keen, but I just
thought you were a player,
possibly, but I reckon,
call them red flags these days.
Red flags.
I reckon that she just had to take time to get used to the idea that a guy as hot as me was interested to save a bit of face.
So I
was pissed every time I seen her. So it was like I was
you're not getting the right impression.
I wasn't giving out the right vibe. I was blittered because I'm working flat out. I'm working hardcore. I'm like, yes, I'm going to have. I'll get a few drinks, and then I'm trying to convince her that like
I'm the best guy ever.
I've
worked so hard.
Husband material.
Aye.
She's like, with the sambuca fucking running down the side of your face. You look like it.
Aye.
So you's met, and then when did you get married after dating for a wee while and moving in and all that together? It
was quite a while. So we'd it was a funny story. my wife we'd got to about 3 years, and she's like sort of making noises that we should move in together. Right, and she's like, I think we should move in together. And this was at the time where it's mid credit crunch.
Right.
So it's mid credit crunch coming at about 09, and I'm like, right, look, it's not the right time for this.
You're hitting her with the data.
I was like, look, it's not really the right time for this. And she's like, right, look, why don't we rent something? Right, and I remember once that I'm fucking rent a fucking house. I'm a property guy.
We don't do that. We buy and rent out.
That's fucking ridiculous.
Did you buy it and rent it to yourself?
I did.
Did you?
No, I remember thinking to myself, how do I get around this? So an inquiry came in, really big house, cracking, getting a really good price on it. I said to her, I says, look, I thought I'm going to kill two birds with one stone here. We'll go through to Glasgow, send her to the Fort Shopping, and go in and train in the gym, right? I'm going to get this deal, and I'm going to flip it, so I'll make some good money on it, right? And I'll do it under the guise that I'll show it under the pretense that like, we should get this to make it look as if I'm looking. Right? And I'm like,
easy peasy.
The house is too big. It's way too big. It's mega money. Like, we shouldn't be spending anything like this. We shouldn't be committing to anything like this.
Exactly.
Because hey, look, you're just trying to figure out. It's like, and look,
first relationship,
we can flip it, right, and make it look as if I'm doing my bit or sorted, and get a gym session in. She can be distracted at the shop. I'll throw her a few quid. She can go and have a good time. Take her out for something. Magic. And it all planned out. So it's like, come on then, we'll drive through. Went and had a look at it, met the owner. About 10 feet in the door, she's like, I fucking love it.
You little fucking bastard.
I remember doing the numbers. I was like, look, Stace, is like, this is wild. I was like,
wages at this time?
24.
Aye.
24. And I'm like, this is wild. And she's like, look, I was like, look, here's what I'm making, here's what you're making. I was like, this is just pushing it. I was like, we're really pushing it. I can
You're going against all that flashy stuff that
I can do this, right? I can do this. I can flip it. We can bank some money, and we can wait and see what happens. Right? She heard none of that. None of it.
The emotion starts.
She's just like, all I can hear is this. Yap. When am I getting the keys? And I'm like, this is just craziness. So I said to us, look, let's let's have a look at it. We'll get it surveyed. It's surveyed way higher than what I thought. Right, so now she's got some ammo, and I was like, if you want to do it, then
I knew in your favour.
I was like, look, it was one of the ones where we went with her call. It was the right call. It worked out. But I was like, nah, this is just sort of putting us, like, there was part of me was like, I wasn't really ready to make that kind of commitment at that size. I mean, there was moving in together, and then there was, right, let's get the biggest fucking house you can possibly find. Afford it when you don't think you can afford it.
It's like right
in the midst of a credit crunch. It was just like, nah. And then
kind of worked out.
The rest was history.
When did, so how old's your oldest? When did you have him?
Blake's 21.
No, sorry, your
George, yeah, he's 11. So George is 11. We had in 2012. So that's when the house started to become a home. So it was way too big for the two of us. We were literally rattling around. And then, you know, when family comes along, I always think family's the biggest commitment. So, you know, when you're starting to plan a family, you know, and I still remember the missus going like, you know, she's skirting around the idea of, do you want to start a family? I was like, well, I'm good to go. Like, let's start like tonight.
How does that differ from your oldest, Blake? Like, do you, how's that? Did that feel weird for you, or was it all right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I was in the game.
You're committed.
In the game, I was like, oh, you know, we're good to go.
Yeah.
But the whole idea was like we'd been, you know, the thing being is we'd moved in, we hadn't killed each other.
Get along.
You know, actually, it was like, no, this is